The Oxi One, this is just hands down the best sequencer that I've ever owned. I think one of the best sequencers out there. And today we'll be sequencing drums from this drum machine, which does have pads. We're not going to be using these pads at all. You can tap these if you want. But we're actually going to be sequencing this thing, of course, with the Oxi One. I've been bitten by the techno bug, so those are the sorts of beats that we're going to be creating today. Mind you that the sounds within the Nord Drum 3 are a little bit more on the old school side, I would say. Mind you that this is a modeling percussion synthesizer, so it's like a drum synth, comparable to something like the Syntakt in that way. The awesome thing that we're going to be exploring today with the Oxi One is just the rhythmic expression that you could add to your grooves by just a click of a few buttons. Like this thing has got swag and we have 6 pads, so as you can guess, 6 voices to work with on the Nord Drum 3. Sorry, Nord Drum 3P. I mentioned this in all of my videos. Your support goes a very long way, and here's a few ways that you can support this channel, support what I'm doing. Of course, liking and subscribing goes a long way. If you guys have any questions or comments, I always like to have like discussions about gear, almost like a forum within my YouTube videos. So feel free to comment or ask questions. I will be getting back to you. I also have a Patreon where I've uploaded an extended version of this video. In that extended version, I put together like an exploration or a performance with this setup so you can see it kind of happening in real time. And of course, there are also affiliate links for the gear mentioned in this video, so the Nord Drum 3P as well as the Oxi One. Please use those links if you do end up purchasing any of this gear. It helps me a lot. And so that's that. Let's go ahead and look into this setup now. The Oxi One is great because you have a bunch of different sequencers to choose from. So you have 4 sequencer voices, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 1, let's open this one up. I'm going to change this to multi-track. So that's the first type of sequencer we're going to look at to sequence our drums. And 2, I've uploaded Matriceal sequencer, which is the last one here. Matriceal has 4 sequencers within it, so you could actually use it to sequence 4 different voices within one sequencer. Here's a video on that, by the way, specifically on the Matriceal sequencer. For me, the combination of these 2 different sequencers is kind of like the sweet spot for drums. And within multi, I could jump from one track to the next, I should say one voice to the next. So maybe kick, snare, hi-hat, or however you want to configure it. And I'll actually start by changing the MIDI channels of each of these. So channel 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So let's say on the multi, let's go channel 1, channel 2, channel 3, and maybe channel 4, and we'll keep the last 2 channels for the Matriceal sequencer, so 5, 6. Of course, within multi, you could just enter in your notes. So I've got a 4 on the floor kick here. On top of this, if I want to change the velocity of these notes, I just press down on this first encoder and I'm able to do that as well. So we'll look into that throughout the grooves and sequences for sure. On top of that though, within this sequencer, there's a Euclidean mode. So let's jump to, let's say the 3rd voice, which is hi-hat, I believe. So I'm gonna go shift, open up the dice. And suddenly we have different rhythms. So basically what a Euclidean sequencer does is it'll like divvy up the notes kind of as it wants or equally within 16 steps. So 8 pulses, sounds like this every 2 steps. 7 pulses, it'll kind of create its own rhythm. You could of course rotate this. It's called permutation, so it's basically when you take the same pattern and you shift it over 1 step or 1/16th note. If you know who Steve Reich is, he's like the master of permutation. So that's an option too. There's also inversion. So what that does, they turn into rests and it just gives you a completely different rhythm. Right, so for me, I find the sweet spot is usually around 6 or 7. And of course, this could just be like a suggestion for a rhythm if you want to add some notes over top of that. So that'll be our hi-hat. Same thing as before though, I'm going to step into the velocity setting here. That's really cool when you just add a really low velocity on every note. So let's keep it like this. This is very cool, groovy. I might actually want to tune these down, so I'm going to go into the Nord Drum 3P. We haven't touched this yet. Tune, pitch. Maybe open up the decay a bit. In my opinion, that's the thing with the Euclidean sequencer, is that you kind of have to work it, or else it's just going to sound really square, which is a sound. Like, that's a very common sound in techno, for everything to just be bop, bop, the same velocity, kind of artificial sounding almost. Not almost, completely. And so my workaround for that is to kind of use the Euclidean sequencer as like a starting point, and then you could just fill in the notes in between, like we just did with these hi-hats. And so you see the division of this workflow, how I'm using these two. This is purely a sound design tool. This is where I'm finding my sounds, and then this is where I'm sequencing my sounds. And I find that this is just a great combination. And speaking of sound design, let's talk about the sounds of the Nord Drum 3. I find that in particular, like the kick sounds, like let's scroll through a few of these. I'm gonna head over to channel 1, drum select. They're very old school, and I find that you really have to work these kicks. That could be a good one. Add some distortion. It's quite 808-y. Bit of click. Share that with the hi-hats. Yeah, that's cool. I'm on channel 2 now. Let's go to the Euclidean sequencer again, and we'll put in like maybe 3 pulses. This is a tom, by the way. Right there. Same thing, I'll tune this up. Maybe I want to throw some reverb onto this. I also have the option of panning this if I want. I kind of like this right down the middle though, so I'm going to leave it as is for now. Usually for all of the higher frequencies, I would go to Matriceal for that, but I really like the way that this sounds. So let's head over to Matriceal. I want to see what's on this. Okay, so this is a bass on voice 4. Ooh, just that. Ooh, sounds amazing already. So let's go over to the bass, which is on voice 5. 4, 5. I might even raise the decay of that a little bit, because it's just, okay, yeah, it's just one note. I could bend it too, so right now it's like being reverse bent. Right now there's like a pew sort of thing happening, which sounds cool too. I find that it's sort of getting in the way of the kick, so I'm gonna go back down to reverse. Boom, boom. It's very subtle. So simple enough. We might change that in a bit just for like the example of this video if we want to get a little bit more intricate. I find that sometimes simplicity works though. This sounds great as is. Let's go to this now. I'm actually going to mute everything except for this. Okay, so this is like a perk thing. We might end up changing this voice out altogether. In fact, we probably will. And to do that, we're on channel 6, drum select. And right here, I could choose any voice that I want. Cool, bring that decay down because I know this is gonna be super busy. And this is where the expression comes in. So actually, let's mute this one. So we just have that snare. I'm going to shorten the length of this trigger sequence. So it's in 5. I'm also gonna create a loop length. So now every 32 steps, it loops. 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Right, so it'll loop everything. All the parameters that I add here will restart after 32 steps. So it creates like something that's a bit more square, and it's easier to latch onto. It's not so generative. The next thing, this is the secret weapon right here. It's the velocity parameter for this sort of expression. Here we go. Velocity, 100% random. Right, so we get something completely different. Let's add some more notes in here. I'm going to raise the decay of this so we can really hear that. Noise level as well. right? So it might not work best for a snare. Let's actually change this over to something else. I've got the microcosm off to the side here. What happens if we turn that on? I don't know about you guys, but that sounds pretty cool. There's actually still one voice left, so channel 4. This groove is already very busy, so I don't want to add too much. Maybe like 1 or 2 notes. I don't even know what this... Okay, so it's just another hi-hat. Maybe something like that. It's so cool because you could actually see all of the notes playing right here all at the same time, which is very mesmerizing. What if we wanted to double channel 4 on this sequencer? Let's do the same thing again. So cool. And of course, if we're in like a performance mode, drop the bass. We could mute any of these things here, any of these individual voices. Kick is gone. Bass is gone. 2, 3, 4, kicks back in. Get rid of these hi-hats. Right, so we just have a choice of anything here. This is just such a good performance tool. This combination is great for drums, even in a live performance mode. Going back to this idea of balancing in between these two sequencers, I feel like we've done a good job of this here. You've got the almost squareness, like the very linear mono fashion of the multi-track sequencer, right? Of course, we could open that up with velocity per note. And then we have the literally unlimitedness of the Matriceal sequencer. There's so many different directions that you can go in. Let's say I mute these parts, play this. Even just changing one little thing. Let's say to this. The rhythm is completely different. If I threw in maybe like some sort of melodic thing in here, interval, I'm gonna change this scale to pentatonic minor just for the sake of it. Change the length of this particular parameter, which is interval. Change up the velocity as well. Right, so it's literally just throwing out ideas at you. It's so easy by but just the twist of a knob or a click of a button and you got something completely different. Bass back in. We ended up using all 6 voices. I think that's more than enough for this type of groove. And that's all I have for you guys today. If you have any questions or comments, please do let me know in the comments section of this video. I've also included a from scratch performance in the extended version of this video over on my Patreon. So if you are interested in any of those things as well as a bunch of other exclusive content, go check out my Patreon. There's a link for that in the description. Love you guys. Thanks for being here and hope to see you soon.